from about 1981 onwards, I was living in Hong Kong on a more permanent basis. So I saw a lot of shows. I went to whatever I could. But of course, compared to London, there was a lot less going on. I was also a member of what I would call an armchair critic group today called the Hong Kong Observers. That had a very major impact on me and my interest in public affairs. And one of the things that I got interested in is why things are the way they are in Hong Kong society. And that was when we talked about what's public policy, public affairs. And I was the youngest member at the time, and because I had a little time, I was asked to do some research here and there on different topics for the Hong Kong Observers. And because of my own personal interest in the arts, I sort of applied some of the questions asked about other policies in Hong Kong, like public health, transport policy, to the arts. What's Hong Kong's art policy? So I got interested, you could say, in the public affairs side of the arts, what the government was doing, what was their thinking, really quite early on. Now, but if we were just looking at the number of shows, the nature of the shows in Hong Kong, I started off by saying, well, there's a limited amount of events happening in Hong Kong. But I switched my, instead of complaining that there wasn't a lot of things, because I met artists and got interested in them and their work, I quickly turned around to think, well, make it happen. I think Hong Kong needed at the time to have a deeper understanding of arts and culture as a vital activity of the human condition, this need to expression and why people express and what they express. But there wasn't really a government policy that is a comprehensive policy to do this. Not that I knew a lot about arts policy. As I said, in the 1980s, I was in my 20s, I was a fresh bee, right? And I was really, because of the other questions that we were asking about other aspects of public policy, it kind of gave me a sense of how to engage government. What kind of questions, what do you say? Now, one of the unforgettable experience that I had was calling up a government official and saying, do you have any information of what's Hong Kong's art policy? And the person couldn't actually tell me what it was. That impression, that experience actually had a deeper impact on me than just on the arts. That you couldn't say to me in a few minutes, what is your existing policy? So my conclusion was, you don't have a policy. And then over time, I had many engagements with government officials because I was sitting on the board of the Fringe, I was sitting on the board of the Art Center, and I could see that arts and culture was actually a kind of nice to have thing. As I said, a bit of nice entertainment for the people, but not really to help people to appreciate and develop the arts as a part of their lives. Today Hong Kong has obviously gone much, much further away, but in the 1980s, that was really it. That was what I saw. I was a very open critic at the time. It's all recorded in various events, so it's not a secret.
You became one of the organizers, that you were contacted by some of the organizing artists, maybe Yan Kuang or Antonio.
We knew each other. I'm a collector, so that's my interest. I'm interested in the arts. I was in my 20s. I hadn't been working for very long, so it means I didn't have a lot of money. But I spent all my money buying art. in my 20s, in my 30s. I was only really ever interested in buying art. So I was interested in what Hong Kong artists were doing. So we were friends. Some of them I knew quite well. Some of them are still my friends. Some of them were acquaintances, but you know, they were part of a network. So we knew each other. Now, the idea of out of context, I can't exactly remember how it came about, but I'm sure it came about through, you know, our various conversations about I wished this and I wished that. So there was a lady called Leanne Hackett who was in the art business. There was Oscar Ho. I think he was already at the Art Center at the time. The idea of doing something unusual, and people like Yank and the other artists, they were very keen on doing something different. So it wasn't about doing a series of artwork that they could sell in a gallery. You know, I felt that many of the artists had some creative urge to do something different. So the idea came out to say, okay, let's do something different. We need to find a space, and they would create. Now, Oscar and Leanne, because they are arts professional, I don't remember that I played a role in, you know, choosing the artist and so on. I remember that, you know, really that was their job in choosing the artist. Some of them I knew, right? Some of them I didn't know as well. But of course, in the end, I ended up knowing all the artists. And my job was, Christine, help us to raise the money, help us to get the managerial side of this event going. So we went to get the venue. At the time, this building was owned already by Hopewell. So we asked Hopewell to lend the building to us. Now, it was a dilapidated building. To hold a public event in that building required us to go to, you know, fire services and whatnot to make sure certain things were done. We needed to cost the event. You could see from the documents today that we had a number of donors. Most of these were my friends. They were people who were interested in the arts. So it was easier to say to them, we really wanted to do this. And I can't even remember what was the total budget or how much money we raised. So that was my role.
But what also fascinated us was actually this quote from the exhibition statement that said, and I'm quoting here, "The artists in this exhibition are always working out of context, displaced in a cultural climate that is often indifferent to their activities. This also applies to public funding bodies where there is a serious lack of support, which does not have to be financial, for the visual arts in the current policy." So what was lacking in the support of both publicly and privately funded institutions at the time, in your opinion? What other kinds of support was needed?
One of the issues that we talked about a lot in the 80s and into the 90s is what support there was overwhelmingly given to the performing arts. And so the visual arts was always the very poor cousin. So it's public funding. It's also a time where the collecting public, and there was a very small pool, much smaller pool then, they were less interested in contemporary art. You know, the contemporary meaning the ones that the artists were producing then. Contemporary would still be, you know, a wider period of modern Chinese art rather than what the Hong Kong artists were doing. So life was very tough for them.
Can you tell us a little more about how you remember that show, maybe describe some of the works or your experience of being there?
I have to say I don't remember all the works anymore. Now, some of them were very dramatic. So there was a bamboo cage. There was a performance, right, where the artist crawled around inside. I think he did that a number of times, right, because it was during 3 days. Um, there were moments where artists needed to explain. So, for example, in Choi and Ji's case, why did you put a rose there? And people were interested to come and ask the artist. So the artist had to be there to explain their work. I remember the opening night was very exciting. Maybe it was just that I was very excited and we were very excited. But all the funders and other people came, and I think they were electrified by the atmosphere.
So you're mentioning some artists were present too.
They were all present.
All the time throughout the weekend?
Well, I don't know if they were there every single minute, but they were there. Now, I myself, I was there on the Friday evening, right, for the opening show. Then different parts of Saturdays and Sunday. I wasn't there for every single minute, I remember, but I did go, morning and afternoon, morning and afternoon. I think the artists were mostly there in case they had to explain things to people who came. It was if memory serves me right, I mean, we weren't having hordes of the public coming, but I think people who came were people who were interested in contemporary art.
And how did they get to know about this?
Well, we did quite a lot of sales job, through different institutions and so on. I mean, obviously we couldn't quite afford to advertise, but through, I think, media or just word of mouth. As I said, I didn't remember hordes of people coming, but the opening night was electrifying.
Because?
It was extremely atmospheric, and everybody was really pumped up for the opening. Like most shows, no? Everybody was very pumped up.